Welcome to Sharing Her Story Unapologetically Ambitious with me, Christina. Welcome back, y'all, to my podcast, Sharing Her Story Unapologetically Ambitious. Today, I have one of my very good friends, Nathalie Mooney, on here as we dive into her purposeful ambition and strong calls to action. Nathalie is a mother of 5 beautiful children, and together with her husband, they enjoy an adventurous and holistic lifestyle on a spacious property here in Tennessee. Alongside her husband, Fran, with whom she has shared many fulfilling years of marriage, they have embarked on numerous ambitious moves throughout their journey. So before we get to hear from her, I want to recap a little bit. We heard from Dr. Jennifer Valley as she encouraged us through her knowledge and expertise while giving us practical advice on relationship building and connection. You can find that episode on all the major podcast streaming sites as well as my YouTube channel linked in the comments. This episode really means a lot to me because Nathalie and I have been connected for over 10 years. We met together as Nathalie and her family were planning a big, ambitious move, and that move led to one of our big life-changing experiences. I'm so excited that she's here. Let's hear more about her. Thank you, Nathalie.
I'm glad to be here.
So let's just jump into some of these questions. Can you share a little bit more about your family and highlight a few key values that guide your lives together?
Fran and I have been together. We started dating when I was 16 and he was 17 in high school. So that was 2001, a long time ago. So that's going to age me. We've been together, it's 2025, so 24 years. But we've been married 18 out of those years. I still feel like sometimes we're 16 and 17, and sometimes I'm like, we've lived completely different lives and put them together. We've grown up together. We have these chunks. We have 5 great kids. Our oldest is 16, then 14, 12, 10, and a 1-year-old. We love our 1-year-old. She has brought life back to our family. We've had a lot of life with 4 kids, but she brought the youth back, and the lack of sleep. That's always exciting. We homeschool our 5 kids. Well, Nora, our youngest, isn't homeschooled yet, but she will be. We do a classical program. We have a co-op, a really great community with that. It's a Christian classical home education that leads into our values. We had talked about this as a family. We talk about everything as a family. It's always, we bounce all these things off of each other. We came up with these 3 values. One is honesty. We put everything out on the table between all of us, even my past and Fran's past. I was saved when I was 21. So there's a lot of my story that I don't love, but it's made me who I am. We're honest about that, but we're also honest about our struggles, and we speak into that to each other, even with the kids, and we've done that with them since a young age. We hash everything out. We get down to the root cause of things, and honesty is also, there's goodness in that, just uplifting each other. So that was one of our values. Accountability is another one. As we struggle and celebrate and just walk through life, we hold each other accountable, and the things that our goals, or when we're down, I think that ties into the honesty of just holding each other accountable. And really that leans into our faith, keeping us on a narrow path. It's difficult. It's really difficult, but doing it alongside of each other keeps us accountable and keeps us going. We speak life into each other, and we don't do it well all the time. We have our moments. That's where honesty comes back in. We felt like also one of the most important ones was quality time. This doesn't put any other families down, but we just build our schedule around our family. It's part of the reason why we homeschool. One of the big things is having our meals together. We can't always do breakfast together because my husband has to leave for work, or Now my oldest works in the morning, so sometimes he leaves, but we try to make sure that we eat like 5 dinners together. And that's very hard to make sure that we do that. And that means sometimes we don't play a sport or we miss an event, or if we have lots of events in a week, we'll block off a few days in a row to have that time together, or we watch movies together. And 16-year-old and a 10-year-old don't agree on the same movies, but we just find that quality time, board games, whatever it is. So just enjoying our family time. And that goes for our marriage too. We try to get our kids in bed at a decent time so that Fran and I can have quality time together, so that a healthy marriage means a healthy family.
It's so inspiring. You said 5 dinners a week. Who are you guys?
Not every week.
Love that. You talk about your Christianity and your faith. How did your journey into missionary work begin, and what inspired you to pursue that path?
We believe that Jesus came and died on the cross and rose again. He died for our sins, and there's nothing that we can do to earn that salvation. It's a free gift to live in eternity with Christ. And I know that sounds crazy to some people, but it's the truth for us. And Jesus Christ came and lived a life that we are to imitate and to love the world, call out sin for what it is, and repent and change our ways. Repenting means like I'm walking in one direction, but I'm going to turn and walk in a completely opposite direction to glorify God. So a lot of Christians go out on the field out of their country and some within their country, even your hometown. I mean, missionary work is all over the place to share the gospel and to love on people, to give up your life, to change the world pretty much, but to change it so that people will live in eternity all together. And it sounds like, it does sound so crazy. And before I was a believer, this would be so crazy to hear. Probably maybe 14 years ago, we would talk about missionaries and listen to people's stories from around the world and even in our city, just the sacrifice that they did. We knew people in Memphis that had really good jobs and could live in a really safe neighborhood and send their kids to private school, but chose to live in a rough neighborhood and serve those in need and just flip their life upside down. And we really admired that. And then we also knew people like in our homeschool co-op, people would come home on furlough and they were overseas in different places of the world. And that was really intriguing to us. I mean, uplifting their whole family and moving to a different culture, experiencing a completely different life to further the mission of the gospel. And so we started praying about it. And there was an opportunity with a family in our co-op. I was raised speaking French, and they were in a country that spoke French. And they needed somebody to help homeschool their kids and help teach them French or help continue their French. And I thought, well, that's really up my alley. We're homeschooling. We know the homeschooling system that they do. I speak French. This would be a really cool opportunity. And so we reached out to this family and we started praying about it and asked other people to pray. This family was praying. We had nights at our house where people were praying with us. It was really a special time where it was like, okay, we feel a pulling and a nudge to go do something. We're not focused on ourselves and we're focused on something else that's bigger than us. We're praying with a friend and she said, God told me, which is crazy too, in a sweet way, that he will honor this if you say yes to this. But if you don't, he also has something that he's just going to throw in your lap. And so he kind of gave us a choice, which was really hard. We were praying for a very clear yes or no. As we continued to pray, we felt like it was something that really fit me, but it didn't fit our whole family. Fran was saying like he knows that he would find things to do there and to as it would grow, but he just didn't find a place for him in that that aspect with this family. And this family thought that we were supposed to come over there too, but we told them no. Wow. Then we kept seeking counsel because we felt like there was something. One of our friends that we sought counsel asked us, what pillars does our family stand on? What's really important to us? And we said, kids. We volunteered at the church, and we just felt this next generation is really important. We felt called to foster care or adoption and living simply, whether that was self-sustaining, farming, living out on the land. These little dreams, which are sweet, because if you know our story, you see all this being played out.
Yes.
And they're like, okay, well, let's pray about that. And then around that same time, we felt like the Lord was telling us to put our house on the market. So this was about November. So we put our house on the market. It sold in less than 24 hours. That same week, our friends come over and they said, we just talked to somebody who's on the board for this children's home in Belize, and they have a self-sustaining farm, and they're looking for house parents. It's kind of like a foster care home. Would you guys be interested in helping them and becoming house parents? And we're like, well, first I was like, where's Belize? So I had to Google it, and if you Google Belize, it's all beautiful beaches and the Caribbean. I was like, well, yes. The home is in the jungle. So it wasn't at the beach, but we talked to members of the board, and this is all in like this 1 week in November. It was like, yes, let's go ahead and talk to them. They come over for dinner. We talk to them, and they're like, we think it's best if you just fly down there and see for yourself and see if the Lord tells you to go there. So we decided to wait until January. We decided, like, let's get our house sold. We go visit in January. So November, January, we visit. It was me and my husband, and we had a 1-year-old at the time. And so that was like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we felt like, okay, first it wasn't at the beach. Second, it was in the jungle. It was really hot. We have pictures of our 1-year-old sleeping in pack and play with like just sweat all around her head. And the heat in January was crazy. And we felt like, okay, this is where we're supposed to be. We came home and said, we're going to do this. We started fundraising. There were people who were saying, you guys shouldn't be doing this. Don't take your kids. Our oldest was 7 at the time. We were getting rid of everything. We raised all the money that we needed in like 2 months. Mm-hmm. And we knew that the Lord was telling us to go. So we did. That's how we pursued it. We didn't even pursue it. It just kind of fell in our lap.
And that's how we met each other. Our lives crossed paths.
Yeah. So, your church was a big supporter of the home, and you were part of the team, and you're like, let's just have some coffee and chat about what you're going to do. And we both had babies.
So crazy where our lives are now, but I love it. And I love that you're still in my life after all these years. You told us about your journey and how you got started with mission work, but tell us about this ambitious plan that you and Fran envisioned for your family, and specifically to this move to Belize.
It's funny, I struggle with the word ambitious. I wouldn't have picked it. I knew that it was going to be hard. It was more out of obedience that we did this. I mean, there was no plan. It's almost like you walk into something blindly and you trust each step. Like every step gets lit up in front of you as you go. The vision was just fully relying on the Lord to provide, letting go of control completely. And it felt very foreign.
You said you had a 1-year-old, but you also had 3 other kids, right?
Yeah, 4 kids. So our oldest 7, 5, 3, and 1.
You took your whole family, 4 kids, you and Fran, and moved to Belize.
We sold everything and packed our whole life until we probably took more suitcases and things than we should have, but 25 suitcases, which felt like not enough at the time. And we showed up, and one of the workers from the home picked us up, and he's like, wow, you guys have a lot of stuff. And we're like, do we? They took us to the home. There's about 23 kids living there, boys and girls, and they knew that we were coming. The home that we were going to live with the boys wasn't completely finished. So our first task when we got down there was finish building this home, build a kitchen, and then move the boys over. And there was grace in that. There was kindness, because we were ready to just like hit the ground running and move these boys in. But it was sweetness from the Lord to allow our family a few weeks to adapt to the routines and the culture and the heat. And and then move the boys into our home. So, and when I say home, it was like 600 square feet and 12 kids, or 4 kids and
Gosh.
8 kids.
Yes, that's amazing.
That's crazy.
Natalie.
Yeah.
And 2 of those boys are now ours.
That's the sweetest thing, and maybe we'll touch on this a little bit, but after we came home, and we'll talk about that, but you guys adopting the boys and their sister, just it was an answer to prayer, and again, like God's goodness coming about.
How did you and Fran talk about this move? How did you both agree that this was the path for your family?
Yeah, so it was actually it was tough. Part of the struggle of going, we had worked through a lot in our marriage, and get things pretty solid. Like our church was kind of like, your marriage is a little rocky, but it was like, it's not that it's rocky. It was that we had to push through some of letting go of like the American culture, the things that we thought we needed, the things I thought I needed, and to get to a place of moving on to the next thing. It's just completely letting go. The path getting us to that place of before Belize and seeing how the Lord lined everything up. And then we said, okay, we'll visit and we're going to say yes, knowing that sometimes we say yes and the Lord just wanted you to say yes, but he doesn't actually take you through it. But we kept saying yes to the next step. And so we said, okay, now let's come up with a number of what we need to live. And so we started fundraising, and that the Lord answered that pretty immediately. We said, okay. So it really wasn't, it was just both of us saying, let's take the next step. And if the next step keeps going forward, then we know that we need to keep moving forward.
How has being a missionary influenced your family's dynamics, and what role do your children play in that lifestyle?
That's a good question. They were part of it from the beginning. They knew what we were doing, and we told our kids, and we still tell our kids, the Lord can use you guys just as much as us to share the gospel and share the love of Christ. He gives them just as much power as he gives us. From the beginning, and even to this day, we encouraged them that they were just as much part of the mission and pouring into specifically these boys' lives.
Mm-hmm.
To give them a safe place and friendship right from the start. And kids are amazing. Like
Mm-hmm.
they adapt so quickly and so easily. I mean, we got there and our kids like picked up on how the kids dressed, and they picked up on that the kids didn't wear any shoes, make themselves part of the culture and play the games. It was so much easier for them. They picked up on their Creole like so
Mm-hmm.
quickly. Everything was simple for them. I feel like they were better at being missionaries than we were.
I agree. Kids are so resilient. That's awesome. Tell us about some memorable adventures that your family had in Belize that your kids may not have had without that big move.
First, living at the children's home, the thing we talk about the most, living in 600 square feet with all the kids. There's 2 sets of bunk beds in each room. That's pretty memorable. But
Mm-hmm.
waking up and the howler monkeys being around our house and are right behind us, that was cool. And they would make their
Yes.
rounds, so it'd be like a loop. It wouldn't be every morning, but every so often they would come around behind us. Spiders, tarantulas, snakes. We experienced snakes out here, but not like the snakes that they do in Belize. Some really cool things that we got to do as a family on our days off. We took advantage of being in a different country that we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, we're going to go explore everything about Belize. But it's not like today. That was almost 10 years ago now. So technology today is still so different, but this is a developing country where we had GPS and stuff, but there really was no GPS. We're still using a map, and there's no fast food. You can't just like get what you want when you want it. It took a lot of planning and a lot of mistakes, but we would experience really neat things like the Mayan ruins, standing on top of a ruin with no ropes around you and no one really watching you. You're just kind of on top and you get to see all the country.
Oh, that gave me so much anxiety. I remember
And our kids were so little.
I know.
Can't believe that we did that. I mean, those were such cool adventures, just risking it all, leaving the protection of the property, even to go to the gas station up the road. It was an adventure. Everything was an adventure. You would think that in Belize they speak English, that you don't have the language barrier, but you still have the culture barrier. It was wild. There's a lot. There's just a little tidbit.
Yes. But your kids got to experience it all. I love that.
They did.
Yes. So what are some of the challenges that you guys faced in adapting to the different culture? And how did you navigate that as a family?
So I was trying to think about what some of the challenges were. I mean, some of it was just different words used. Some of it was disagreeing on how things ran. Men kind of had a they led a lot of things. Women just stayed at home. I always called where I was like, all right, I'm in like the Twilight Zone doing the same loop, and I'd be like, can I please go slaughter pigs and go sell them to the market? I was desperate for something. So that was difficult. There was some dark times for me because it was like I struggled the most letting go of my own identity and culture to give into a new one. It was really difficult. But to overcome those challenges, we just asked lots of questions, and we just really, I mean, sometimes they would laugh at us for the questions that we were asked, but it was like we really wanted to know how to do it well and how to do it right. And we really did not want to impose our culture. It was really hard, but I'd be like, all right, teach me how to cook rice, teach me how to cook beans, teach me how to cook the chicken. And it was also, that's how we grew community, allowing them to teach us their ways, showed that we cared, and that we wanted to learn. And we truly did. We really wanted to be immersed and not change things. And there were times where we did try to change things and it didn't work, because we were trying to push us onto them and our culture. And so there was a lot of learning. There were a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but it grew us. It changed us for sure.
Tell us the most challenging aspect of transitioning back to life here in the United States.
We were there about 18 months. We got down there with an 18-month-old and then left when she was almost 3.
Wow.
But 18 months, we still talk about Belize. We still talk about the kids. It feels like it was yesterday. And I mean, you've been to Belize. The days feel very long. So those 18 months felt like years and years and years and years. Transitioning back home, we were different people. Our kids were very different. Our youngest, who's now 10, I mean, she still, her favorite food is rice and beans and stewed chicken. It's crazy how certain things just become ingrained in you. These were very formative years for them, where their brains were developing. But the hardest thing coming home was, I mean, there were so many hard things. We felt terrible that we left, but we felt like the Lord was calling us home. We know we had just really begun forming relationships with the boys. And then we felt like we abandoned them. And that was really difficult. I think that we still struggle with that pain and that grief to this day. What could we have done differently? And thankfully, the Lord has spoken into that in many different ways. That day when you guys came home with them, it felt like the Lord lifted a huge weight off of our shoulders. And we've had the opportunity to connect with other kids that were adopted. And we had communicated with people that had been there afterwards that reached out to us because they'd seen pictures of us and the kids would talk about us. So it was really sweet. Even though we didn't go back, there were seeds that were planted.
Definitely.
One of the hardest things coming home is we left not knowing when we'd come back. We thought it would be more than 18 months. But we came back to nothing. We had some really, really sweet friends that had 4 kids of their own and took us on with our 4 kids. We lived with them for 9 months. They loved us so well. Me personally fell into a dark place coming home, and they dealt with my sadness and my attitude and just loved on us until we found a home. I mean, we had to rebuild everything. Fran had to get a job. We had to figure out our routine again and figure out where we were going to live. It was just a continuation of trusting the Lord for each step of the way. It was such a crazy time. Today in my pictures, that picture came up of when we moved out of our friend's house. They loved us so well in that time. So they made our transition easier. One of the big things that stuck out to me, our third, he was 3 at the time, 5 when we got home. We had signed him up for baseball, like t-ball. And when the season ended, he just couldn't stop crying because he said, I will never see them again.
Oh.
And it hit me that coming home to them felt like everything then was a permanent end. Like then when something ended, that was it. And so we really had to work with them for a long time. They all felt that pain of never seeing somebody again. And so I think that was the hardest part, seeing that it didn't only affect me, it didn't only affect my husband, but it had deep lasting impact on our kids, and they wanted to go back so bad and be able to run around and play with those kids again. A lot of pain coming home. The transition was hard.
How do you guys still continue to live out that mission or the values that you built there in everyday life here in the States?
I mean, there's your kids. We get to love on them. We still feel pulled towards youth and kids. We volunteer at the church and spend time with them, and not just out of like obedience, but because we really do love the youth and we love this next generation. I direct our homeschool co-op, and I want them to hear and feel the gospel and feel the love there. We try to seek opportunities as much as we can. It's hard in America. You can quickly lose focus. I feel like we do have to work harder on it here and keep our eyes on what the greater goal is and focus outward and not so much inward.
Your lifestyle and your values may appear unconventional or different to the mainstream culture. What motivates your choice to raise your family this way?
How can we foster the values that we have, the quality time, the accountability, the honesty? How can we keep pointing our kids to the Lord? And honestly, being out on the land, it really is a gift from the Lord. When we came back, we kept looking for the opportunity. It was the same thing of the Lord putting us in seasons of pursuing something, and it was a closed door. We were pursuing adoption, but it never panned out. I think it had us waiting for this perfect amount of time. We ended up buying a house that we were renting. We sold it in 24 hours again. And then an opportunity for land came up. And it was just a continuation of God working in our life and pursuing a place of refuge. And we're still in a transition. We got our land and we moved our kids into a camper, which I think 600 square feet with 12 kids and then 300 square feet with 4 kids was good practice and seemed very similar. And that was 18 months. So I didn't even connect that. 18 months in the camper.
18 months in Belize and 18 months in the camper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and we started building a house. We're actually doing a house dedication, and part of our prayers is that the Lord would use this. I mean, he gave it to us and we want to give it back to him, however that looks. If it's having people live with us. I mean, our kids are getting older. Our oldest is going to be a senior and moving out. And so does that open up space for somebody to come out here eventually? I don't know if we'll open up our home to foster care. There's lots of things to pray about, but
yes.
So we were praying for space for God to use. And so we're back in a waiting period. So it'll be interesting how this unfolds even further.
Yes, I love that. You mentioned earlier about the simple life. What does that mean?
Yeah, and we don't do that well. It's hard.
Yes,
it's so hard. Everything is available to us here.
The simple life here in a Western country. you guys do it well. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have old cars and we try to not buy as much as we can, or, I would love to have all this nice fancy stuff, but we think about what we're spending and how we're spending it. Eating meals at home. The kids are still in the camper and we're in a half of a house. As we build, every decision is how can we make this the best use of the money without going overboard. Homeschooling.
Yes. Awesome. As we close, what advice would you give to other families considering missionary work, especially those with children?
Well, first, God doesn't prepare the called. He prepares those that he wants to send out. He will ask us to do things that we didn't think that we could do. One of the advice is keep praying, asking the Lord if it's on your heart at all. And it doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be overseas. It could be right in your neighborhood, in your home. Don't do it alone. We are built for community. It's really easy in America to stay isolated and not let people in. But part of being a follower of Christ is that he calls us to community. He calls us to do it locked arms with each other, and that there's that honesty and accountability. Things are hard and we're messy and we're going to mess things up. So not doing it alone. We're all messed up and we're all making mistakes, but we can do this together.
I love that.
If you feel called, asking the people, find your prayer warriors, find those people who will pray. It's the most powerful weapon that we have. Nobody can take that away. Even if you lose your speech, you can still pray. Setting boundaries and keeping routines, especially with your kids. One thing that we realized early on we got to Belize was we needed a day off with just our family. And that was very important. And so knowing that boundary and our routines, we ended up incorporating bedtime with all of the children, the boys, but we made it. And that was probably one thing that we kept as our thing. We had the same routine with the boys that we did with our kids. And we just had the same bedtime routine, which was really special. Including your kids in the mission. I mean, like I said, they're just as much a part of it. Your kids just have as much power as you do, and you'll see that fruit come out through the years. You'll see when you put your kids through a challenge. Don't be afraid to have them do something that's hard. Like we said, they're very resilient. They learn so quickly, and it makes them stronger, and it makes them own their own faith. Our kids, I know the Lord because they were pushed in some hard situations. And it's okay if you're pursuing missions, it's okay to say it's hard, because it is.
Yes. What is one important, encouraging message that you want moms to hear for everyday life?
Ask for forgiveness from your kids. Say you're sorry all the time. Because you messed up, but the most important thing that you can do is be honest and transparent with them. I know the newborn days, the little kid days feel really, really long, but those days will start feeling shorter and shorter. And all of a sudden you have a 16-year-old that's driving and looking at colleges and thinking about marriage. It's going to shift so quickly. Keep that honest, raw, transparent relationship with your kids. Show them that you make mistakes and that you're not perfect and that you're learning life alongside of them.
Thank you so much, Nathalie. This is amazing. And you've been so encouraging to us and sharing your life story. We would not be where we are without you guys. Well, friends, it's you and me. Let's change the world. I know that's an ambitious idea, but let's do it together.